Hello, and welcome to our update on sending money to and from Brazil. Today, we'll be looking at some of the challenges in moving money in and out of Brazil, some of the regulatory hurdles and requirements in terms of local regulations. I'm joined today by Juliana Scolari, who is the head of Moneycorp's LATAM business. Welcome, Juliana.
Thank you, Alex. Happy to be here.
Recently, certainly until the COVID crisis hit, there's been a lot of positive press on Brazil and how they're moving to truly becoming the business hub for LATAM. In particular, I've seen firsthand how a number of business sectors have been growing and rising to prominence. And some of them that really have come to the fore are sectors such as the agribusiness and soft commodity sector, which in particular has risen to prominence as has become the second biggest food producer behind the US. Oil and gas has also been a particularly dominant industry sector, with Brazil becoming the third largest oil and gas producer behind the US and Russia. The automotive industry has been particularly dominant, and renewable energy and environmental solutions are also coming to prominence. Healthcare and life sciences have also made great strides until very recently, and there has been a lot of interest around Brazil. Juliana, when you think about these developments and how you see Brazil developing out, what are your observations and how do you see things changing?
Sure, Alex. A lot of good information about Brazil. We see recently a huge change and a huge growth of inquiries about doing business with Brazil, and they are all very recent. So just to bring some examples, we have seen the Port Houston in the United States with plans to grow even more in Central and South America. As a matter of fact, they hired a Brazilian business developer and who's going to be doing the business from São Paulo. There are a lot of news about plastic engineering as well in Brazil. MasterCard and Facebook just paired up to offer Brazilian money transfers locally. And this news was just showing up last week, as a matter of fact. And the records of transferring funds to Brazil that we just got and recent record highs in 2020. So, you know, we continue to see a lot of inquiries and a lot of interest into Brazil, even though we obviously know what's currently happening in Brazil. We know that Brazil is now the epicenter of COVID-19, unfortunately. However, again, companies are taking advantage of the depreciation of the Brazilian real to really start making those business development and to start making those capital injections into the country.
Yeah, I know from my own experience with clients in the past that moving money in and out of Brazil can present some quite unique challenges. And obviously this is due to the heavily restricted nature of the currency. Both the onshore and offshore counterparties are forced to transact the onshore in Brazil. Obviously, the central bank heavily regulates and oversees all BRL transactions. And all financial institutions must be licensed by the central bank in order to buy or sell BRL. This has led to a relatively complex regulatory environment. All FX transactions must be registered with the central bank and booked against an authorized financial institution with an onshore presence and license. There are actually very few international banks and finance companies which do hold the required local licenses, and this can make transacting in BRL challenging for clients. The government also imposes certain IOF taxes for foreign flows relating to certain transactions. And the central bank places a lot of the regulatory burden on the licensed financial institutions in terms of registering transactions and also gathering required information on those flows. Moneycorp has an onshore bank and has the appropriate licenses in place to be able to transact onshore BRL on behalf of clients. So that means that we can provide clients with both the offshore non-deliverable forward and option product to get an appropriate forward hedge in place. And we can also provide clients with the onshore deliverable spot transaction. This will give us the ability to be able to do both of the pieces of client flow to ensure the client gets a viable and the best optimal solution in terms of hedging and onshore combination. This year, we'll also be rolling out a mass payment solution with API integration for clients who need an electronic payment solution. And so it's important, I think, when partnering with an FX and payments provider, that you look at somebody who's a truly global partner, and this can be a huge advantage for clients. Juliana, would you be able to just give us your experience of some of these challenges that clients can face onshore and how clients can overcome some of these by partnering with the right institution?
Absolutely, Alex. And I'll start the explanation by giving an example. So when companies send funds to Brazil via their local bank, most likely this bank is a non-Brazilian financial institution. So they send the funds to Brazil, and only upon arrival, the receiver bank will then convert those funds into BRL, usually at a very poor rate of exchange. Should the client not wish to continue due to pricing, for example, in order to get those funds back can be really, really hard. It's also really hard to guarantee an exact amount of reais to arrive at your beneficiary. They may receive more funds than expected or less than expected, depending on the fluctuation of the market. Because again, the rate's not locked until those funds are into Brazil. The Brazilian receiver bank, as you mentioned, is responsible to collect all the compliance paperwork and to follow all the central bank guidelines. So if any of those requirements are not met, or they don't have a clear understanding of the reason for the transfer, funds will be returned. It may take a while for the funds to be returned, and in order for the company that's sending those funds to be able to see those credit back again into their account. Also, another important point is that the beneficiary Brazilian bank, because they have full control of this transaction, they will communicate with the receiver, with the beneficiary, in order to sort any requirements that they have, and not with the sender. So it's not a clear and transparent communication in order for you to trade with Brazil. So again, just to answer the question, why it's hard to guarantee value date, is because again, once you send those files and the time that it takes for all the compliance bits to be met, you can guarantee a date to be delivered. And the full value is in regards to not being able to lock their rate. And only when the Brazilian bank actually converts is really when you're going to be able to see the exact amount of reais that you are receiving. Which then makes us go to the second slide, talking about the communication or lack of communication between the financial entities. So as I mentioned previously, because the Brazilian bank is speaking with the beneficiary in order to sort any issues, at the same time that this is happening, potentially the non-Brazilian financial institution is trying to reach out to the non-Brazilian side of the business to sort the same type of issues, but they don't communicate. And the Brazilian banks, mainly, they will be speaking Portuguese, right? So the language barrier exists there. Obviously, there are a lot of institutions now that are bilingual, but the majority of the transactions in Brazil does happen in verticals, which means that Brazilian banks are only communicating with the Brazilian entity. And the issue there is exactly that. Both providers won't communicate among themselves in order to sort the payments of both of those clients combined. So that's why we believe that working with a global provider is the best solution for anyone working with Brazilian reais. A global provider offers transparency throughout the entire payment process. You have the specific expertise required in order to make sure your transfers are done safely, securely, and correctly. We can, as a global provider, guarantee price. And what I mean by that is the fact that you are able to lock the exchange rate prior to sending your funds into Brazil. And because you're locking exchange rate, you know the exact amount of reais that's going to be delivered onshore. Obviously, the expertise also helps in many areas, including registering correctly with central banks. And when I mean by register correctly, it's because every single transaction is registered in central bank with a different code, which is what we call a nature of transaction. So you really need the expertise being there to make sure that this is recorded properly. Every nature may have a different tax that is applicable to the transaction. So again, making sure that you're working with an expert that will tell you and will help you with the exact nature can help you also making sure that you're paying the appropriate taxes when it comes to Brazil. And helps the client also avoid complications when the time comes to get those funds back from Brazil. So as far as next steps, if you wish to work with Moneycorp or you have a Brazilian requirement, the step number one is to provide us the contact details of the Brazilian entity or individual that you wish to transact. And our Brazilian team of specialists will get in touch with them and request all the required documents on your behalf. If you're new to Moneycorp, you will need to open a free account with us. Your account manager will send you the application and also the list of required documents to be completed. Once you return your application and required documents, simultaneously, our team in Brazil will be collecting the required Brazilian entity's documents. Obviously, if that Brazilian entity is part of your group, just let us know who is the best point of contact in Brazil so we can go ahead and collect those documentations. Once all documents have been reviewed and approved, your account will be then authorized and you're going to be ready to trade your BRL. Whenever you're ready, you contact your account manager to book your trade.
So thank you very much, Juliana. And just in summary, I just wanted to say that trading BRL can be challenging. We understand that, and we're here to help every step of the way. So please reach out if there's any way that we can assist. Our contact details are on the slide that you see and detailed below. So from London, it's a very big thank you for joining us today from me, and over to you, Juliana.
Thank you very much, Alex. Thank you all.